strong.
Chapter 161, Then Die. Lin Ye's eyebrows rose slightly, with a sharp glint of desire. Although Ye Yezhen is his cousin, in fact he has little contact, he cares about spiritual practice and has the power as a cloud to him. Especially now that the ancient worlds have opened up, the land of the 100 countries will definitely undergo a transformation. If we still hold on to the previous thought that the kingdom is above all, sooner or later, it will be dangerous. The permanent opening of the abandoned realm meant that he would be able to create princes in the future. Ye was greatly influenced by the kingdom and was probably related to his identity. After all, he was the one most likely to inherit the throne. Your Majesty leads me earnestly, but I am used to walking alone, and I will not walk with your Majesty. Ye Wuchen said, saying that the word, solitary, is also a way to save Ye Yan. But Ye and the people from the Kangye kingdom were slightly surprised, and looked at Ye Wuchen in amazement. At this time, he was clearly with Ye Fusion and others, saying that he was used to walking alone. There was a sharp gleam in Ye's eyes. Was Ye Wuchen joking with him? Okay. Ye Yan then smiled slightly. Since Ye Wuchen made his choice, he naturally wouldn't say anything. Yu Yao, how about you? Ye looked at Lin Yao again, and the surname was removed, making people feel closer, like a kind of hint. Lin Yao's eyes flickered, and she felt a little awkward. But still smiling gently, whispered softly, Your Majesty, I have something to hide. He said. Lin Yao's beautiful eyes also looked at Ye Fusion. This reasonable answer said nothing, but it was definitely some kind of rejection, and the appearance was enough to make one think. Unspeakable. The smile in Ye Zheng's eyes disappeared this time, looking at Ye Fusion and Lin Yao in front of them, and the people in Kangye Academy also showed sharp eyes. Many people stare at Ye Fusion, can't it? Kangye China's first beauty. Ye Fusion saw Lin Yao couldn't help but look at him. How could he feel the whole? Unspeakable. What do you mean? Very good. Ye's tone was a bit cold. No matter if it was an excuse or some other reason, Ye Wuchen and Lin Yao rejected it without any hesitation. His poignant question just now was more like a joke. As King Kangye's son, even a 17-year-old genius doesn't have the right to speak. Although Ye Fusion's talent was extraordinary, he was the future ruler of the Kangye kingdom. Ye Xiao raised his steps and left. Without looking at the Ye Fusion, he walked towards the Wanghao cave in front. Ye Fusion didn't really care about Ye Yan's attitude. Ye Tianzi treated him well, and he would remember that if Ye Yan was willing to befriend him, he would naturally be willing to get along with each other. In fact, whether Ye or Ye Dungeon, to him, there is not much difference. They were all sons of Ye Tianzi. He never thought of interfering in the struggle to become king. But from the start, Ye made a clear distinction with him and considered him a hypothetical enemy. As a person from Ye Dungeon, maybe because he was born in a royal family, he had too much imagination, but he was wisely misunderstood. What do you mean? Ye Fusion looked at Lin Yao. What are you looking at me with an unspeakable secret? Lin Yao's beautiful eyes are innocent, touching and gentle. What do you want me to say? Lin Yao's eyes were very deadly at this moment. Ye Fusion looked into his eyes and thought. Wouldn't he be conquered by her charms again? Too good to be good. Ye Fusion turned his eyes and sighed. Lin Yao's eyes stared at him for a moment. This narcissistic man. Is there anything special about this princess cave? Ye Fusion looked at Yanqing Mo and asked, without mentioning Ye Yan, these things are trivial to him. The princess cave contains the coercion of the will. They will directly suppress the people close to the cave. The closer the coercion, the stronger the coercion. If you release some ability to resist the coercion of the will, the cave will fight with the same will. Yanqing Mo looking forward to the majestic caves of God. As long as you overcome this strong will of coercion, you will have the opportunity to be attacked by your willpower and become a lucky body, allowing you to walk to stroll in the caves of God. From distance, you can embody the mood and good luck. When Ye Fusion heard Yanqing Mo's words, he looked towards the cave promenade, where there were two figures sitting cross-legged and practicing with their eyes closed. There are only two people in the big prince's cave. They are so dazzling. The light around the two bodies shone with good luck, spinning more than 10 feet. At this time, Ye Fusion saw Ye Yan in front of him lift his steps, and walked towards Wanghao cave. Instantly, the light flashing in the cave turned into an invisible force, and oppressed Ye. For a moment, Ye Jian exploded into a powerful sword, encircling his entire body, forcing a step forward. At this time, Ye Fuxian clearly discovered that the majestic cave bloomed with a mysterious and unexpected force, like a holy power, headed for Ye Yan. It also turned into a Xiao Xiao sword. Ye Fuxian subconsciously operated the idea of self-awareness, and he suddenly discovered that the coercion of the cave came from several carved stone statues, and the stone statues contained the pressure of kendo, which Yung Qianmo called the same attribute of coercion. As the great prince of the Kangye kingdom, Ye Qiang was naturally exceptional in talent. He was not only a sword master, but also a spiritual master, a descendant of the royal family, and even Ye Wuchen. In fact, he majored in the spiritual department. Assisted by the sword, the cutting power is very strong. His body continued to step forward, against the pressure of Kendo's immense power. Ye Yan's body continued to approach the cave until he stopped outside the 13th step. These 13 steps are known as the 13 steps of death, and the will of the cave will be multiplied by the power of the attack. It will really hurt the people who step. Those geniuses are blocked in these 13 steps. Take a step, there may be some advantages, Yung Qianmo said. Ye Fuxian nodded his head, and the ideas of freedom and self-awareness became extreme. The willpower in the cave seemed to slow down in his eyes and attacked Ye. Dong. Ye Yan took a strong step, cut his sword and cut everything, and it seemed that there was a terrible storm around him. Waves of heavy momentum swirled, like ocean waves. The first wave receded, then became stronger, and whistled and rolled towards Ye Yan. If only martial arts are practiced, not spiritual or spiritual, then pure martial practitioners can't set foot in this cave. Ye Fuxian said silently in the heart, accompanied by Ye Zuan's second step, the momentum became even more strong. Then, the third step, the sword is so arrogant, Ye Zuan's step stopped. He reappeared the sword, and the sword wrapped around his body, covering his body, turning into a strong defense. He stopped and stepped out again, but once again, the cavern turned into a terrible storm. He swept, smashed everything, and then hit Ye, and the sound came out. Ye's body flew back directly, and he continued to retreat, looking very embarrassed and still with blood on his body. The big prince. The people of the Kangye kingdom stepped forward. Ye waved his hand to signal that everything was fine. His eyes were a little ugly, and he only took 3 steps. Every step is like a limit, you have to constantly violate your own limits to keep moving forward, Ye Fuxian whispered. Genius, didn't you give it a try? At this time a coquettish laugh came, and not far from there Li Lianmei looked at Ye Fuxian. Wanghao grottos and Kangshan stone walls are different, Liu Yuan said lightly. Many Tianzhao figures came to the cave in succession, and many of them also tried, but only 2 people could walk to the promenade of Wanghao grottos, and the 2 also spent a lot of time trying. Kangshan stone wall is a realization, Wanghao caves are not enough to rely on understanding, but also need their own will and strong spiritual talent. Tianzhao Morphin, the family of thousands of leagues, also came to talk. Kinghu Grottos, 13 steps of death, 2 people sitting on the balcony are 2 very famous top-level monsters in lieu of 1,000 alliances. At this time, 2 more figures came from behind, coming here. Yankanmo. One of them shouted. Yankanmo looked back and saw his brother, Yang Ziki, who humiliated him yesterday. There was another person next to Yang Ziki. This person's hair was tied up, giving off an extremely sharp feeling. Upon seeing it, Yankanmo shouted, Brother Zhao. Zhao Ha. People looked at him. Zhao Ha, son of Yu Jianzong, was very talented. He has taken 10 steps out of the 13 steps of death in the Wanghao grottos, only the last 3 steps, showing that it is very strong. Brother Zhao, this is his son. Yang Ziki pointed at Ye Fuxian and said to Zhao Ha. Yanqingmo and said, Brother Yun, I am very disappointed in you. Regardless of Jin Yanqingmo's behavior, it is inevitable to spoil Yu Jianzong's face. After all, he is a responsible disciple. Brother, Yanqingmo was not as indifferent as Yang Ziki. Zhao Ha is Lord's son, and he is very talented. He was the leader of their generation, and all of his disciples had great respect for him. Zhao Ha didn't say anything, and his eyes fell on Ye Fuxian. I can understand the Kangshan ruins on the 4 sides of the stone wall, and I have an extraordinary understanding. I heard that Yu Jianzong's disciples offended you first, so you want Yankanmo to be your servant. Zhao Ha said, since Yankanmo promised me, then I will give you a chance. If you take a step in front of this prince's cave today, if you can defeat me, I will admit that Yung Qianmo will follow you to practice, and Yu Jianzong will no longer ask questions. If you can't do better than me, but dare to accept my disciple Yu Jianzong as a servant. Zhao Ha looked at Ye Fuxian Leng Ao and said, then die. The indifferent voice revealed an unquestionable tone. Yang Ziki next to him sneered, and Zhao Ha was so talented that he had taken 10 steps in the 13 steps of the death of Wang Hao grottos, and some of his comrades, Tian Zhao, could do it. Ye Fuxian will die today. Really arrogant. People smiled when they heard Zhao Han's words. As Zhao Han's strength, he is qualified to say that. He gave Ye Fuxian the opportunity to surpass him, and he was qualified to take Yu Janzhongshan. The proud girl was a servant, but she was better than dead. Chapter 162, Three People. Ye Fuxian looked at Zhao Ha, his face was like a jade crown, his eyebrows were clear, and standing there was extraordinary. He naturally noticed that Yun Kunmo's attitude towards Zhao Ha was different from Yang Ziki's. Obviously, Zhao Ha has a higher status in Yu Janzong. So he is arrogant and arrogant. He claims that if he defeats him, he will no longer care about Yun Kun's affairs, defeat, and die. However, Yun Mo promised to be his mate. In other words, he dominates if he wins, and gains nothing, but loses his life. Do you want to take back your words? Ye Fuxian looked at Zhao Ha. Zhao Han's eyes swept across Ye Fuxian, his eyes were sharp, and he looked like a sword blooming from his eyes, and said coldly, the words I said will never be withdrawn. If you don't accept it, you are still dead. A man in the world of glory is not qualified to talk to him about his condition, and is still from the land of hundreds of countries. Ye Fuxian smiled and did not argue, he walked to the Wang Hao cave. Yu Yusheng glanced at Zhao Ha coldly, followed Ye Fuxian's footsteps, and everyone went to the cave. Zhao Ha looked indifferent, moved his steps and walked towards the cave. Yang Ziki followed. The people around you rushed to the cave. Zhao Ha once walked through a 10-step cave. This time, can he break through? 13 steps to death. The last 3 steps are said to be the most terrifying and can kill people. They looked at Ye Fuxian with sympathy. This genius from the land of hundreds of countries has great understanding, but I am afraid to die here. The King Prince cave is very wide and majestic, people are scattered in different positions, they will try together with Zhao Ha and Ye Fuxian, they also have a secret meaning. Compared to them, they are more motivated and push them forward with stronger conviction. Many extraordinary figures stood there in front of Luhan grottos, and an invisible force passed. Many people in the back looked ahead and looked strange. It is interesting that these geniuses are really ready to travel together. Zhao Ha is the most outstanding person of the Yu Jianzong generation. He had extraordinary talent and had taken 10 steps before. This time, no one could. Mojia Morphin, the land of the Qianmeng League, is inferior to him. Even though Li Liani was a woman, her talent was also very extraordinary and she also had to perform well. Although Jin Yunqing Mo promised to be Ye Fuxian's servant, but his talent was not weak. It was said that he had defeated Liu Yuan in the Kangshan ruins, but at that time he realized the meaning of the stone wall sword, and now he and Liu Yuan are better off. There is also Yang Ziki and some Tianzhou people in the land of 100 countries. What will they do? Of course, Ye Fuxian, a genius who once comprehended the ruins of Kangshan, is also looking forward to it. Even the ending is already ruined, they still want to see how many steps Ye Fuxian can take. Can he take 7 steps? If 17 steps can be taken for the 13th step, it is more than half, which means that his talent is extraordinary. Those who could take more than 7 steps in the 1,000 leagues were all renowned geniuses. Qi Yi looked at Ye Fuxian and others, and then stepped forward, preparing to continue trying, only taking 3 steps for the first time, which was not a good performance. Chu Quangren and the people from the Yanchu kingdom also came to the caves. In Nandu country, listening to the wind, he didn't even have a chance to fight. At that moment, Ye Wuchen's strength gave him the thought of avoiding war. Now taking this opportunity, he wanted to compare with Ye Wuchen in secret. Ye Fuxian didn't know people's thoughts. At this moment, he was standing in front of the cave, feeling a mysterious pressure and coercion, lamenting the wonders of the prince's cave. This coercion is like a heavenly power, and its power is extraordinary. Admiration. But at this moment, he was going to challenge this overwhelming power. Zun raised his steps, and Ye Fuxian walked forward. He did not use any attribute power, but walked forward with pure flesh. The carved stone statue of the cave gave off a faint light, an inexplicable compulsion came, and it turned into a real power to oppress him, but this suppression was definitely not strong enough to stop his steps, and his steps continued to advance. Shouting walked quickly, and soon came to the 13th step of death, and the next 13th step was a test. An invisible oppressive might constantly surfaced, and even thought power was rushed into my mind. Not far from Ye Fuxian's left, it was Zhao Ha, the ancestor of the imperial sword, and Yun Qianmo, who was in the rest of his life, and so on. Everyone reached the 13th step of death. Dong. Next to Ye Fusion, Zhao Ha stepped forward, and, for 3 consecutive steps, was extremely strong. After taking 3 steps, he paused for a moment, glanced at Ye Fusion, and then said to Yun Qian, I hope he won't be too disappointing, otherwise you will look too cheap. He said. He stepped out once more, and violent sword intent appeared all around him. He even took 4 steps and was very strong, leaving everyone behind. Ye Fusion didn't care. He took his first steps calmly. An invisible momentum filled his body. This move was extremely stable and his body never shook. There are several carved stone statues that shine brightly, and an invisible trend is oppressing him at the same time, turning into a coercion of will and attacking his spiritual will. It is extremely cruel. The various forces around me took steps, and the first step was not a problem for the geniuses present. Ye Fusion felt the power calmly. He did not go to see other people, looked at the cave in front, raised his steps, and continued to step forward, still not releasing any attribute power. Majestic grotto, the mysterious power descended, and the momentum swept violently again, and became stronger, hitting his body violently, and a powerful force rushed into his mind. It was terrible, and he wanted to destroy his will. The powerful force turned into an invisible howling wind, but Ye Fusion's body was still motionless and extremely stable. Then he took the 3rd step, and his stronger momentum and willpower came, which made his body let out a roaring sound. The momentum is fierce. The rest of his life is next to him, synchronized with him. He also does not release attribute abilities, but as pure power. For the rest of his life, he was born with divine power. What he does best is strength, and I respond to that with the same superpowers. 3 steps. Many people in front of the cave looked at those who stepped. Ye Fusion, the rest of his life, Ye Wuchen, and Yun Qianmo, and many others, took 3 steps. And looking at this trend, there are a lot of people who can continue to move forward, at least the 4th step can't mess with them. Ye Yehung is also in the 3rd step. Before that, he stopped here. This time, he had to make a breakthrough. Closing his eyes, Ye was surrounded by an extraordinary sword, and his spiritual will seemed to turn into a sword that never moved forward. He stepped forward, the horror sword swept over, and rushed to his mind. The 2 powers collided madly, and finally, victory was won. At this moment, Ye only felt that his will was stronger. He opened his eyes, and there was a flash of Jianming. He stood up with a smile, and the 4th step was successful. In front of the cave, those genius figures stopped again. It's invincible. At this time, the strongest person still belongs to Zhao Ha. He had taken 7 steps, stopped again, glanced at Ye Fusion and the others behind him. Is Zhao Ha waiting for Ye Fusion? In the hearts of people secretly, there is no heavy step in the 7 steps. Zhao Ha is worthy of being the first person under the position of Yujian Zone. Too slow. Zhao Ha looked at Ye Fusion and said, what is your talent in the Kangshan ruins? Ye Fusion glanced at Zhao Ha not far away, then retracted his gaze, still staring at the cave ahead, lifted his stride, and took the 4th step. Everyone's eyes flashed, but before they could react, Ye Fusion's steps were lifted again, and the 5th step was taken. Many people looked at Ye Fusion, and then they saw Ye Fusion take the 6th step. When he stopped, the man displayed an incomparable compulsion, swept through everything, and let the depressing weather suppress him, still not moving. Everyone showed surprise. Ye Fusion was not surprised to be able to take 6 steps, but 3 steps were still so strong, which meant that he could continue, and the momentum in his body accompanied him as he stepped. As they get stronger, they seem to be able to gather strength against the cave. Boom! A loud sound came out, and everyone turned their eyes, and then saw the rest of Ye Fusion's right side stomping on the ground like a raging monster, and took the 6th step. The whole body was filled with wildness. Extreme sense of power. Ye Wuchen covered his sword with a dazzling sword, and surrounded his entire body. He pointed his fingers forward, and directly opposed the intimidating power. He wanted to kill the road with his sword. When his finger fell, he also stepped on it 3 times in succession. Step to step 6. The 3 of them took 6 steps in a row, and many people looked at them, and they developed a trembling feeling. Ye looked a little embarrassed when he saw the scene over there. 26 steps, and 6 steps are so powerful, he only took 4 steps. Sundar and Ye Wuchen and others have a big gap, so the talents can't be compared on weekdays, but at this time the comparison is clear. Even Lin Yao had taken the 4th step and took the 5th step. Chuchu Madman didn't want to lose and took 6 steps, but he was very hard, only feeling drained of strength and energy, and the whole person was tense. At this time, in front of the cave, Ye Fusion moved again, took the seventh step, and let the enormous amount of violence strike. He remained motionless, without the slightest inclination. Dong. There was a loud noise, which was the rest of his life, and he also took the seventh step. His eyes turned to Zhao Ha, who stopped at the seventh step, his eyes cold. Ye Wachen's palm slapped at the same time, as if an endless sharp sword waved. His body moved with the sword, and the space around him, like a sword air storm, erased everything, but in the seventh step, it fell steadily. Boom. A loud sound came out, and Chu Madman was shocked to fly when he hit the seventh step, and then fell to the ground with a bang, while spitting blood. His face was pale. Ye Yezhen looked at the three figures who took 7 steps, but did not have the courage to take the 5th step. Chapter 163, Rushing. Zhao Ha saw that Ye Fusion and the three of them took 7 steps like him, and his expression changed slightly. With a cold hum, he continued to step forward. On the 8th step, Jian Yi annihilated everything, but couldn't stop Zhao Han's steps. He did not stop, and continued to take the 9th step. 1 step down, everyone saw the sound of a sharp sword howling in the space, and the cave was about to go crazy in the direction of Zhao Ha. He stopped and prepared for his next move. The 10th step was his limit before. That's strong. People looked at Zhao Ha, and then looked at Ye Fusion. Although Ye Fusion took 7 steps, each step became more difficult. Other Tianzhou characters, such as Mo Fan, are only at the 6th step at the moment. Li Lianyi, Yanqing Mo, Yang Ziki, and Liu Yuan are all staying at the 5th step, and they feel a very strong pressure. Yang Ziki and Liu Yuan both looked a little unsightly. They are quite famous in the Qianmeng land, but they are compared to 3 people who are not high level. At this time, they rushed into the cave. At first glance it looks weak and strong. The cave of the Prince Kings is different from the Kangshan ruins. The Kangshan ruins may rely more on understanding, but this cave requires a strong spiritual will, unshakable momentum, extraordinary resistance to stress, and the ability to self-break. Ye Fusion didn't care about their thoughts. In fact, he never placed those people in his heart. His goal of entering the wilderness was only to become strong and to fight against the Nandu Kingdom and Luo Jinline in the future. There is luck here. As for Zhao Hanji's Liu Ruo, he didn't know each other at all. In Ye Fusion's eyes at this time, there is no Zhao Ha, no Yang Ziki Liu Yuan, etc., except for the cave. The spirit and the spirit were united, and the momentum was shattered, just like when the 9 sweeps of the sky bloomed. The footsteps advance again, and the 8th step was taken. Destroyed. But his spiritual will became more tenacious, and that was another step. The void trembled. Ye Fusion took the 9th step. I once again stood in the same position as Zhao Ha. At this point, Zhao Han's complexion changed slightly. He had already taken the 9th step. After the limit of 10 steps, Ye Fusion caught up very quickly. I have one more step, and he has reached his limit before. It's strong. Everyone shivered and looked at Ye Fusion. Most of them have been thrown away. Ye Shan was about to start shaking when he took the 5th step. Yang Ziki, Liu Yuan and others still remained in the first 5 steps, staring at the 2 figures riding in front of the dust. Boom. However, it seems that some people don't want Ye Fusion and Zhao Ha to grab the spotlight and take a step forward, and the void is shaking. For the rest of my life, I took the 8th step. He didn't stop, roared, stepped out on the 9th step. The burly body was full of explosive power, and the momentum seemed as if nothing could stop him. Zhao Ha, Ye Fusion, and the rest of his life, these 3 are parallel. Ye Wachen seemed to see Ye Fusion and the rest of his life, and he was also moving. His body looked like a sword, mixed with a sword, became an endless sword. He closed his eyes and entered a state of ecstasy. Going forward, in the 8th and 9th step, the whole person seems to be trapped in the absolute self. This world has only him and only the sword. Now, 4 people side by side. Seeing this scene, even the black wind eagle watching behind was excited, flapping its wings. As for the rest, I couldn't help but shake. Ye Fusion, the rest of his life, and Ye Wachen all came together. At this moment, they took 9 steps together. It is conceivable that they were shocked in their hearts. If you take another step, it is the 10th step, and Zhao Han's limit is the 10th step. Doesn't this mean that the 3 of them have talents that are no weaker than Zhao Han's? This is amazing. Zhao Ha is the son of the head of Yu Jianzong. He has extraordinary talent. The younger generation of Yu Jianzong has the best talent. As if feeling a crisis, Zhao Ha took the 10th step after brewing. He drank. The sword gas storm turned into a river of swords. His body seemed to be drowned by the sword, but he finally stood still and walked out the 10th step of his extreme step. With only the last 3 steps remaining, he can set foot on the cave path. feel the willpower of the cave at close range, and get lucky. However, Zhao Ha had no time to relax. Not far from him, Ye Fusion's body moved and he took the 10th step. The momentum in his body became stronger and stronger, will and strength mixed together. Fight, fight against the will of the cave. Boom. The 10th step came out, the wind and waves, the long hair flew, the clothes screamed, and what was more terrible was the attack on the spiritual will, which was oppressed and wanted to destroy everything. Stop. People looked at Ye Fusion, their hearts trembled. This is the 10th step. Zhao Han's limit is here. Ye Fusion had reached the same place as Zhao Ha. If the two were tied, what would happen to Zhao Ha? Zhao Ha, he obviously will not accept the draw, his eyes are very sharp, he looks forward, then closes his eyes and feels all the strength, and then takes the 11th step. The last 3 steps, the 3 most terrifying steps, there are many peerless monsters stopping here, and even when they are forced to retreat, they are again bitten and seriously injured. In fact, there was once an extremely terrifying monster that died in these last 3 steps. 13 steps of death are said to be in front of Luan grottos, but the last 3 steps are actually 3 steps of death. Today, Zhao Ha was forced by Ye Fusion and took the first of the last 3 steps. The sword seemed to pierce into the flesh, and the will of the cave exploded in his mind. At this time, no one knew what kind of attack Zhao Ha had experienced, and everyone only saw his body shaking violently a few times, countless eyes in him, staring at his body. Zhao Ha, will he be hit with a backbite? This step is too dangerous. With Zhao Han's extraordinary talent, everyone still feels that his steps are unstable, as if crushed, as if life is in danger at any moment. The void seemed to be silent, and even Yanqing Mo, who was stepping, stopped and looked at Zhao Ha. Mo Fan, Li Lianyi, Yang Ziki and the others all saw Zhao Han's 11th move. Space seems to freeze, as if after a long time, Zhao Han's body stabilized, he screamed, his eyes opened, and a sword shot out. Step 11. Everyone's heart trembled, and they desperately took 3 steps. Zhao Ha stepped out and violated his own limits. How did you take this step? Just listening to Zhao Ha loudly, his tone full of arrogance, Ye Fusion took 10 steps, enough to be proud. Unfortunately, he broke the previous limit and walked out of this absolute steps of life. I only know the horror of this step if I have experienced it myself. Ye Fusion, it is impossible to take this step. Once he stepped out forcefully, he would be miserable. Noise. Ye Fusion gave Zhao Ha a glance, without hesitation, and took the first of 3 desperate steps. At this moment, Ye Fusion only felt that the cave was full of light. He had an illusion, as if this majestic cave was aimed only at him. Even more terrifying, in his pupils, there were several stone statues carved in his eyes and pupils that expanded wildly, flooding his vision and pouring into his mind. At this moment, Ye Fusion felt that it was no longer a simple will attack. The carved stone statue will turn into a substantial illusion. The stone statue appeared in his mind like a real prince, and the unbearable would overwhelm him. Then, it turned into an incomparable potential, one that would crush his will and obliterate him. Ye Fusion finally understood how terrifying this move was, which was completely different from the previous 10 steps. No wonder Zhao Han's limit was the previous 10th step. At this moment, Ye Fusion closed his eyes. In his mind, the will and the stone figure of the prince faced each other. Unparalleled oppression comes from oppression. Ye Fusion's mind seems to have a terrible virtual image. The enormous monster ape is full of immortality, holding a giant stick and dancing. 9 Xingtangsing attacks can destroy the world. Once, the seniors of the snow ape shook the god with sticks. Now, how will the prince defeat him? The power of will seems to be recreating the scene from the past. The demon ape wants to split the world. Not only did he defend, but he also took the initiative to attack, and with great tenacity, he split the stone statue of the prince. There was a roaring sound in his mind, the stone statue exploded, and Ye Fusion's body was still as firm as a mountain, and he couldn't stand up straight. Step 11, stand firm. At this moment, countless eyes were staring at Ye Fusion's back. His figure seemed to be standing tall, giving even the illusion of pride to the world. How could it be? Yang Ziki and Liu Yuan looked at Ye Fusion in shock. He even took the 11th step. Zhao Ha looked at Ye Fusion with cold eyes. This time he has broken through. After reaching his limit, he took the 11th step. He knew that he could not continue, the last 2 steps could not be resisted by him, he had reached the limit of the limit. Ye Fusion, however, is still on par with him, and has reached this step just like him. You can be on par with me, Zhao Ha voiced a hint of surprise. However, it turns out that he seems to be thinking too much, and ignoring his words. Ye Fusion, who violated the prince's will, raised his steps again, and made everyone's heart tremble because of it. Should he come forward? Are you crazy? See Ye Fusion, the first time he came to Wanghao Cave, he had already taken 11 steps and had to leave. Under their shocking gazes, Ye Fusion took another step. When the will of the prince came, he still did not dodge, and directly crushed it with an irresistible desire, and took the initiative to attack. At this moment, he looks like a god. It can't be destroyed without desire. Step 12th. People's hearts trembled. Ye Fusion took the 12th step, leaving only the last step. It's simple. I haven't waited for them to digest the shock in their hearts at this time, but they found that Ye Fusion didn't stop. He picked up his steps again. Countless eyes were fixed on it, watching the figure without moving. Will he take the final step? Boom. With Ye Fusion's steps falling, the space in front of the cave seemed to tremble, and also the hearts of the people. Chapter 164, How Reckless. As Ye Fusion took the final step, he only felt that the whole cave seemed to be imprinted in his mind. Each of the stone statues imbued a strong will. If the prince comes alone, he will destroy it. His will. Before that, the will of these stone statues was actually split apart by Ye Fusion's attack. At this moment, it was more like a strong counterattack. At the same time, Ye Fusion's body also experienced an incomparably heavy weather momentum, constantly hitting his body. The dual pressure of the body and desire is enough to destroy people, but defeating it is another baptism. The blood on Ye Fusion's body seemed to fall and rot, and an immortal power erupted in his body. Tianxing 9 invaded the heavens and the world. Despite standing there, the momentum on his body became crazier and stronger. In his mind, Wang Hu's stone statue looked very careless. He must be removed from the world, and he is not allowed to exist. Ye Fusion thought a lot at this time, thought of Chia Fan who had been high above him, thought of the irresistible divine will, and the Prince Emperor who thought he could control his fate. All died. A terrible will was born, drowning the stone statue and completely expelling it from his mind. Ye Fusion opened his eyes revealed a spirit of arrogance to the heavens and the earth, and the other leg moved forward, his foot firmly standing. Standing proud. At this moment, he was flapping white clothes and tossing his hair like a young emperor. Countless eyes stared at the proud back, and my heart trembled. 13 steps of death, Ye Fusion stepped all the way, and then he could move towards the walking cave and realized the willpower of the cave up close, like the two above. How dazzling. I saw Zhao Ha again. He still remained at the 11th step, remembering his previous proud words, if you lose, then die. Irony. Ye Fusion glorified the kingdom and walked through the cave for the first time. However, all the geniuses in the land of Qianmeng, no one can take 10 steps except Zhao Ha. Make fun of, question. All destroyed at this point. Based on his talent, if it is time, why is Yung Qianmo not a servant? But Yung Qianmo chose him to enter the realm of glory first, which makes many people feel strange, because Yung Qianmo is the pride of the sky and Ye Fusion from the land of hundreds of countries, and the country is very low. Ziki looked at his brother and looked at Ye Fusion. His expression was very embarrassing. Jin Yunqing Mo Mi's eyes stared at Ye Fusion in shock, and he was already at the 7th step, and it was difficult to move forward. Ye Fusion, walk once. Boom. A loud vibrating sound caught everyone's mind, the earth trembled, and a roar roared between heaven and earth. At this time, everyone's eyes turned, looking not far from Ye Fusion. When everyone looked at Ye Fusion, the rest of his life also completed the 10th step. He took the 11th step. For the rest of his life, his burly body was invincible and he was indestructible. He screamed at the stone statue, and nothing could break his spine. At this step, he fell steadily, and was left to be hit by the storm, the rest of his life standing like a war god. Not only him, Ye Wuchen next to him, but also challenging the 11th step. His brows looked like the birth of a sword, and then there was a faint silver light blooming, a small silver sword shot out, destroying everything, and the next moment was the boundless will of the sword. Crazy. Everyone saw the scene shaking, and today, even 4 people challenged the 3 steps of despair, and all succeeded. Ye Fusion even took a complete 13 steps. The 3 of them are all being challenged for the first time. Zhao Ha is no match for them. All his life turned arrogant, looked at Zhao Ha, not far away, and said coldly, who do you think you are? He doesn't deserve to lift his shoes for him. No wins, nothing. Defeat, then die. Zhao Ha, he thought he was strong. I heard the strong words of the rest of my life, and everyone sighed. The son of the head of Yu Jianzhong, the talented Zhao Ha, was even beaten on the spot, and the fact was in front of him. Zhao Ha was very embarrassed when he heard the words of the rest of his life. In front of a person who took the first 13 steps, he couldn't use his talent to prove anything. Now that Zhao Ha is thinking, can it have an impact on the 12th step? While he was still thinking, the rest of his eyes that had drifted away from him had already taken the 12th step. The wild power destroyed everything, and his eyes opened, and those arrogant eyes stared ahead. The carved stone statue is not afraid of the prince, and screams, as if the will of the prince will be destroyed, even if it is the prince of the prince, how can he be destroyed? Loud noises and violent storms caused waves. After Ye Fusion, for the rest of his life, he took the 12th step and surpassed Zhao Ha. Zhao Ha, is it strong? Talent, is it extraordinary? The two noble realms next to him only used him once to surpass him and abandon him. Ye Vachan saw Ye Fusion's 13 steps and the remaining 12 steps of his life, and his eyes flashed a sharp meaning, like a sword, and his faith in the heart was firmer. One can only inspire oneself when one walks with the strong, and one can challenge oneself with stronger faith and stronger will. This was why he and Ye Fusion walked together. When people exist, he will also follow the limits he once thought of. Moreover, he was not only surrounded by one abnormal person, but two. So how could he be left behind? Therefore, he also took the 12th step, regardless of the consequences and desperation, like his sword, advance fearlessly. I'm really crazy. Everyone was shaking inside. Is this really cruel? And not only one person escaped, but 3 people escaped together. This is unheard of. I don't know if there is a shocking scene in front of the prince's cave. But at this moment, their hearts beat unbearably, it was too cruel. Ye was dust-free, and he took 12 steps, the 3 shook Zhao Ha. Zhao Ha, who had never lived before, was now standing alone behind the 3, looking extremely ironic. What qualifications did he take to be proud of? 3 low-level people from the land of 100 nations have all surpassed him, the son of the head of the imperial sword sect, and the pride of the heavens. What qualification should he say if he loses? He thought he would win, but in the end he discovered that the 2 people around Ye Fusion were not as good as him. How ironic. Ling Yao's beautiful eyes behind looked at the 3 figures in front of her for a moment. Her eyes looked a little strange, she was desperate. Can these 3 people consider his feelings? I think these 3 are the top 3 in the Kangye National Wind. Ling Yao's secret path is that Ye Tianzi's vision is really spicy. Now they are still so dazzling in the ancient world, and they have compared countless Tianzhao in the land of Qianmeng. Jin Yunqing Mo was speechless. Previously, he thought only Ye Fusion Fenghua was extinct, but did not expect that the rest of his life in Ye Vachan's was so extraordinary. At this moment he only slightly understood why Ye Fusion was so arrogant and let him become a servant directly. There was a moment of silence in the void, only the 3 people took all the light between the heavens and the earth, and they stopped, as if feeling the power in the cave. But at this time, a voice came out. They saw Ye Fusion's body receding all the way back, shocked by the violent power. Is this finally unbearable? Everyone's eyes bulged, but just now, why didn't he step directly into the cave corridor? Many people are a bit confused. Ye Fusion's body stopped before the 13th step. He raised his head and looked at the Wanghao caves ahead. A voice came out of his mouth, come again. Did everyone hear this voice? Hey again. Ye Fusion, what does that mean? When they were confused, Ye Fusion stepped forward again, this time, releasing the attribute power in his body. A powerful breath erupted from Ye Fusion's body, with a domineering thunder, a bit of thick soil, and a sharp golden breath. At this time, more stone statues lit up above the cave, a wave of violent power came straight at Ye Fusion, and at the same time, an even more terrifying will appeared against his will. Boom, boom, boom. The amount of violence exploded in Ye Fusion's body, but everyone saw Ye Fusion walking forward as casually as the court was walking. 1 step, 2 steps. Immediately, he took 7 steps, a step that many people couldn't resist. It was very simple for him. At this moment, they finally understood the meaning of the word, come, that Ye Fusion said. He did not choose to set foot in the corridor of the cave to realize the will of the cave. Instead, go again. For those who can't be challenged in the eyes of others, and try their best to do so, he directly overthrows him without hesitation, as if, in his opinion, the 13 steps of death can be repeated at any time if he wants. The 8th step, Ye Fusion is like a dragon, his roaring power is flying wild. Stepping on the 9th step, his figure was like that of a pengu, sharp and incomparable. Take the 10th step, Ye Fusion can shake the world like an ape god who is proud of the universe. The unparalleled willpower turned into substantial attack power and rushed into the body crazily, making his body continuously emit loud noises. He once again took 3 desperate steps. The 11th step was taken, the blood in his body was boiling, the roar of rolling, and the will of Wu was released madly. When the terrible will rush into the body, he does not fight, that is endurance. The body is experiencing the impact of an incomparable force, the clicking sound is continuous, and the body is undergoing a baptismal transformation. Boom! Ye Fusion's louder breath came out, and Wu turned into a real light, coming out of the body, like a real dragon was born. Endless power exploded fiercely from him, and a bright light enveloped him. The physical body breaks the boundaries and metamorphoses the martial arts. Breakthrough, enter the French phase. He did it again, not to prove how superior he was, but to use the power of the cave to temper his body and impact the world. Chapter 165, Shall I Let You Go? Surprisingly, there was a lot of light staring at Ye Fusion. Everyone knows that Wanghao grottos can train practitioners. Many people stepped in front of the Wanghao grottos to undergo baptism of the will of the cave, which could increase their self-destruction limit. But no one in Ye Fusion never chose to set foot in the cave corridor after taking a complete 13 steps. Instead, they had returned without hesitation, releasing the attribute power in the body and relying on the will of the cave. The attack to soften the flesh, thereby breaking through the physical limits of the flesh, turned into a realm of law. Martial arts enter the legal phase, and the military meaning is released at will, and it is more powerful and can be thrown into the legal phase. The people from Ye Yan and Kangye Academy stood behind and stared at Ye Fusion's figure. Their eyes were a little embarrassed. Looking at the rest of their and Ye Wuchen's lives, it seemed that the disciples of Kangye Academy were useless. 5 steps. The 5th step is not too weak, but it is very uncomfortable with Ye Fusion's 3 crimes. What's even more terrifying is that even at this moment, Ye Fusion still doesn't mean to stop. He was under incomparable pressure at the moment, but he also felt the transformation of his own strength. In my mind, this time the stronger one will rush over. The willpower of every attribute is chaotic and obliterated. More stone figures imprinted on the mind. Ye Fusion is against this power and is not afraid of Wang Hui. Prince want to destroy it. An arrogant meaning seeped from his body, his blood rolled, the emperor's tactics operated subconsciously, and a ray of imperial meaning appeared in his mind. At this moment, the will of the prince on the stone statue looked horrified. If he wants to try to fight, the will of the emperor comes out, Ye Fusion directly destroys the prince. If you are blocked by this cave today, how will you kill the real prince in the future? He took the 12th step without hesitation, without losing his pride, like an emperor. A more powerful stone statue invaded my mind. This time, Ye Fusion did not destroy it, but let them attack their own spiritual will. His will is like that of an emperor, and you will experience storms and storms. As soon as the 12th step descended, Ye Fusion stepped directly into the 13th step without any fear. This time, his steps were firmer and firmer than before, and he wasn't shaken in the slightest. He didn't seem to be trying. More like, conquer. 23 steps out, and at this time the whole cave was imprinted in his mind, as if he felt his pride. Many statues carved in the cave appeared in his mind, and he wanted to exterminate his fanatics. Ye Fusion is fearless, the will of the emperor is very strong. He was killed by the emperor's will and remained motionless. He directly covered the emperor's will with the emperor's will. The will of the mighty emperor seems to be completely integrated into his will, like his to submit to the emperor. At this moment, as if something was broken, it was the transformation of spiritual power. A powerful spiritual storm wrapped around the surrounding power and swallowed it into the body. The aura of various attributes and strong will seemed to be Ye Fusion's food. Spiritual power destroys the ground. The puppet heart trembled again. Ye Fusion's martial arts training, he was still dissatisfied after the martial arts broke the ground, and continued to use the power of the cave to dampen the spirit and destroy it. At this time, both mental strength and martial arts broke through, and they stepped into the realm of law. Many people just feel a little numb. Today, in front of the Wanghao cave, many arrogant figures in the Qianmeng land were conquered by someone from the glory land in the land of 100 countries, and their anger was completely gone. In contrast, Zhao Ha, the son of Zun Yujian sect, was dim. He is proud of heaven. What is Ye Fusion? I saw that at this time, Ye Fusion's wealth was blooming, shaken, there was more than 10 feet, and it was still crazy and strong. The princes of the Princess Cave seemed to be continuously integrating into it, turning it into luck, making luck even more strong, quickly turned into dozens of luck, terrible to the extreme. They had never seen anyone with such strong luck based solely on Wanghao grottos alone. There are many ways to get rid of bad luck, but for the people of the ancient world, it took a long time to understand the ruins. The easiest way is to loot. But Ye Fusion subverted their consciousness, but based on understanding, it is necessary to approach the prince's luck level, which is too frightening. If others in the Thousand Leagues could be like him, wouldn't it be easy for Wang Huqiyun? Okay. The rest of his life seeing this scene was very excited, as if he himself had managed to break through the ground, and then he finally lifted his steps and rushed towards the last step. At this time, his body was tight, the clothes on his arms were crushed directly, and the blue muscles were exposed. The terrifying muscle line makes people feel incomparable strength, and the pure body strength is very strong. A terrible roar came out, and the rest of his life roared in the cave stone statue, and a ghost-like ghost appeared in his body, shining forever. Boom. His footsteps fell, as if the devil stepped on the day, his body let out a loud noise, every part of his body seemed to change, and an incomparable violence would be swept away, making him even stronger. He shouted again, breaking the will of the prince, and his lifelong eyes looked like a dark golden flame, like a demon. Another dire situation. People stared at the back like demons, and their hearts trembled. This is crazy. Although several people have stepped in front of the prince's cave before, there is no Ye Fusion and the rest of his life. Strong impact. These are two monsters. Chi Ye Wachan looked at the two figures in front of him. At this time, his mood was very calm, but he was never resolute. His heart is a sword, a will sword, and a body sword. The whole person seems to have turned into a sword, an invincible sword, and stepped out towards the last step forward. At this moment, the endless sword was torn apart, and the terrifying will that had been shaved tore into his body, causing blood to appear on his body. His will sword also seemed to collapse at any moment. The small silver sword that was shot screamed, and it could crumble and be crushed with the slightest carelessness. If it collapsed first, what awaited him would be destruction. But he has no fear, no fear. When Ye Fusion and the rest of his life stepped out, he realized that his talent was not only inferior to Ye Fusion's, but not as good as the rest of his life, he must be as strong as the other two, and he must have a more tenacious heart. Fearless. Those who refine swords cannot retreat while advancing. At this step, when he took a step, the sea and the sky widened. If he retreated and the heart of the sword broke, he would never be able to exceed his own limits. Wu Jiangxiu could only do everything if he had the courage and faith to treat death as a home. Many people looked at Ye Wachan in shock, and he took the last step, the whole person was tense, many people were even a little nervous. Lin Yao's eyes stared at him tightly, he understood, a little careless Ye Wachan can die forever and die here. This person is too difficult, he has already taken 12 steps. Why bother doing it, is it worth the risk of life for this step? A loud sound came out, and Ye Wachan's steps fell completely. At this moment, his body was flowing non-stop with the sword, bursting towards the cave stone statue, and the sword flowing all over his body was like a statue. Sword body. Obviously Ye Wachan succeeded, and he made the 13th move. Only 2 people came to the cave to practice in the cave. However, in these days, Ye Fusion and the 3 of them came and managed to take a complete 13 steps. For thousands of years in the land of the Qianmeng League, not a single power has ever been born 3 figures like that at the same time. At this point, the 3 of them stood on the last step and stopped. Ye Fusion looked at the stone statues in the cave quietly, constantly feeling the will contained in each carved stone statue in the cave, and watching the idea operate very freely. At this moment, he could clearly feel every kind of will. The more you realize, the more you will realize this power of will. He tried to release the imperial will with spiritual will and poured it into one of the stone statues. Gradually, he found that the will in the stone statue resonated with the imperial will, as if yielding to the imperial will. As he expected, the imperial will that was born in Donghai city in the past was a higher level of will than Wang Hui, but he didn't know how to use this power at all now. Once under the will of the empire, he was in Donghai city has erupted into an astonishing power, and has struck a strong existence in the heaven realm. It seems that this is enough for me to practice for some time. Ye Fusion quietly said, this Wanghao cave is a good place to practice. He looked left and right, and saw the rest of his life in Ye Wachan coming to this step with a smile, then he looked at Yun Qianmo and Lin Yao, and he could see thoughts that could release the pressure on them. Stone statue. Ye Fu Tianyi divinely conveyed the power contained in several stone statues, and then shouted, Yun Qingmo. Come. Yun Qingmo looked at Ye Fusion. I feel healthy, and then try to move forward. Ye Fusion said. Lin Yao, not far from Jin Qingmo, saw the scene and couldn't help but yell at Ye Fusion, hey. Ye Fusion looked at Lin Yao doubtfully, and then seeing his gloomy eyes, Mei Yan looked at him angrily, as if dissatisfied with his partisanship. Ye Fusion was silent. Wouldn't this woman be jealous? I am sick. Ignoring his eyes, Ye Fusion said, one by one. He said, the motivating force will enter Yun Qianmo's mind, but he does not have the attacking power, but let Yun Qianmo feel it. Behind Ye Fusion, Zhao coldly saw the scene. Ye Fusion obviously ignored his existence. Yun Qianmo. Zhao Ha opened his mouth. Yun Qianmo looked at Zhao Ha again, and then only heard the other party say, return to Zongmen within a month. He said that as long as Ye Fusion won over him, he would no longer care about it, and now it is not easy to repent in front of everyone. But still reluctant, so only gave Yun Qianmo a month. Jin Yun Qianmo Mi's eyes froze, and then he saw Zhao Han's body take a step back, preparing to be great. May I let you go? A cold and arrogant voice came out, and Zhao Han's steps froze on the spot. Chapter 166, Lucky Prince. This voice naturally came from Ye Fusion. Everyone's gaze was fixed, looking at Ye Fusion. Hey this guy, are you crazy? He beat Zhao Ha. Zhao Ha had taken a step back and only let Yun Qianmo return to the door after a month. Although still very arrogant, the situation is so. Although Ye Fusion's talent is dazzling, but the realm is different. Zhao Ha takes care of his face without repenting in public. He dares to provoke Zhao Ha on his own initiative. Isn't he giving Zhao Ha a reason to deal with him? Are you talking to me? Zhao Ha looked at Ye Fusion with a hint of ridicule. Before I feel good, I'm not allowed to move. Ye Fusion did not respond to the other party's words, but said indifferently, if you make a move, you will die. Zhao Hanshan's color became more strange, moved, then died. He looked at Ye Fusion's due with a cold smile. Since he was going to die, he had to fulfill it. You really want to die? Zhao Ha said coldly. Zhao Han's words fell, and Ye Fusion's eyes let out a sharp breath. In the opening and closing of Ye Fusion's eyes, a terrible will went straight to Zhao Ha. Yun Qianmo's mind, but is full of terrifying power. For a moment, Zhao Ha only felt that he was not facing Ye Fusion, but the super strong intent power hidden in the stone statue, and killed him. With a sharp sound coming out, Zhao Ha exploded with an extraordinary sword, but it would instantly pierce through everything from the stone statue that contained Kendo's will. Hum. With a loud, sharp sound coming out, everyone only heard a single, mixed, scream in it. Zhao Han's body trembled, and blood continued to flow from the body, even the eyes. Overall, blood was flowing out. At this moment, everyone's eyes froze there, staring at the two figures. The stone statue is alive. One looked at some of the stone Kendo statues in the cave. It is the same as the Kangshan ruins. Liu Yuan saw the face of the Collodion Iron, and Ye Fusion in the Kangshan ruins could use the sound of the piano to motivate the will on the stone wall. Now in this strong-willed cave, he can go straight to the stone statue without the help of a piano. Going to attack, is this man human? When the power fell, Zhao Han's body couldn't help but shake. At that moment, he tasted death. You are kidding. Ye Fusion looked at Zhao Ha with a smile. He had a handsome face, a clean smile, and looked harmless to humans and animals, but at this moment in Zhao Han's eyes, he looked like a demon. The June people also felt a chill. Before that, Zhao Ha was very domineering, and Ye Fusion was defeated and died. The rules were set. Ye Fusion didn't say anything, and walked calmly into the cave. At that time, he was unable to compete with Zhao Ha. Next, the cave stepped, and the end was due. Now, he can use the will of the cave to destroy Zhao Ha, and his momentum has changed instantly. Zhao Ha moved and died. I have no excuse, now the rules are set. Zhao Han's face was very ugly. He is the son of Yu Janzong's gate, and a heavenly gifted man. Her domineering language was still in his ears. Right now, he was in such a situation. I can imagine how embarrassing that would be. Throbbing is dead, not moving, is standing here always watching. Hit him, Zhao Ha, how will he stand on the ground of Qianmeng in the future? It was a shame that he was forced to be so afraid to move. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Ye Fusion didn't look at Zhao Ha anymore, and looked at Yun Qianmo. I saw that the color of Yun Qianmo's face at this time was a little strange. Zhao Ha was the son of the door. Ye Fusion treated him like this. What should he do when he walks out of the cave in the future? What should she do? He promised to be Ye Fusion's assistant and girl, and give something away, but it was still difficult for him and Zhao Ha to betray the division's door for his opponent. Yun Qianmo, you keep sober. Ye Fusion introduced the will contained in the stone statue into Yun Qianmo's mind, let him sober up, and then looked at Lin Yao and did the same. At this time, everyone saw that the black wind statue stepped onto the stone statue, and took the 13th step of death. In addition, 4 steps were taken. Then, with the help of Ye Fusion, the stone statue began to be realized. Well, I'm going to practice first. The rest of his life stared at Ye Fusion. Okay. Ye Fusion nodded, then took a step forward from the rest of his life, walked over the cave, stepped under the stone statue, and felt the perseverance of the will. He found a seat calmly and soberly. The same was true for Ye Vachan. He took 13 steps vigorously. Several changes in his body seemed to have occurred. Now he needs to meditate for a while, and this cave statue deserves a slow realization. Zhang Wei and Ye Fusion and Zhao Ha were still standing there. Ye Fusion looked at a stone statue, realized the willpower in it, and increased his luck. Zhao Ha was more miserable, he was forced to stand there, not allowed to move. At this moment, his eyes looked at Ye Fusion very yin, but he was afraid to take a risk. Behind him, the many figures of Tianzhao, Mo Fanli Liani, and others in the Qianmeng land were quite restless. The 3 Ye Fusions appeared too dazzling today. Ye Yexi, Chu Quangren, and the others were even silent. He, especially Ye, looked at the 3 figures with complicated colors. A little time passed, and after a long time, everyone saw that Yun Qianmo's body was moving, and he began to try to take a step forward. Under everyone's attention, he actually reached the 10th step, and then tried to take a step on the step 11th. He succeeded. Many people couldn't help but look at Ye Fusion. It seems that because of his help, Yun Qianmo was able to do it. He can motivate the desire of the statue to make Yun Qianmo feel. I was silent for a while. Yun Qianmo challenged the 12 steps, followed by 13 steps, all stepped, and walked to the exit of the cave. This made Zhao Han's face, color, even more ugly, as well as Yang Ziki and Liu Yuan. Not only Yun Qianmo, in the next period, even Lin Yao, his bodyguard, and even the black wind carving, with the help of Ye Fusion, tried to move forward step by step, and continued to approach the cave corridor. And finally running. Of course, because they relied on Ye Fusion, what they got naturally was not as good as the rest of the life, and Ye Vachan did it on their own accord, but even so, they had a lot of luck, and then they were able to go to the cave corridor feel slowly. Seeing the many figures on the balcony, everyone was silent for a moment. Is this okay? Ye Yan looked at Ye Fusion, doubt in his eyes. I looked at Lin Yao and others who were training in the cave promenade, as if they had made a decision. Ye finally said, Ye Fusion. Ye Fusion looked away from the stone statue, turned to look at Ye Yan, and said, Is there something high for your majesty? Take us to the balcony. Ye Yan said blankly. He didn't say, but we belong to Kangye Academy and the other people there. Obviously, it was a shame to say that he was alone, so he brought everyone from Kangye Academy. Of course Ye understands that it is not noble to ask Ye Fusion to do something, but he only took 4 steps. If he accumulates luck at such a speed, I am afraid that it will be difficult to get Wang Hu's luck. He needed the prince's luck. As long as he got it, the throne should be his, and there might be an opportunity like Luo Jinlin. The throne of the Kangye kingdom was only 1 step back. So he didn't hesitate to put his face down, but even so, his tone was still a bit stiff and indifferent, not like asking for help, but more like an order. Ye Fusion heard Ye's words and said with a smile, and said, Since your majesty has confessed, don't rely on others. I believe that your majesty will understand his majesty's good intentions and rely on himself. This is what Ye gave him when he entered the ancient world of the wilderness, and now it is returned to the other party. Tianzi's kindness will be in his heart. If Ye Bu had not done those things before, of course he was a friend, he could help, but since Ye Xiao had to draw a line, then he had to fulfill it. I heard Ye Fusion's words. Ye's face became embarrassed. He had put his face down, but he was still rejected. Ye Fusion almost hit him in the face. He looked at Ye Fusion coldly, but didn't say anything. Ye Fusion continued to understand the will of the stone statues. After preparing to comprehend these stones, he condensed the Fa. At this time, I saw a walk in the cave, and one of the 2 people who practiced there had moved. Suddenly, many eyes in front of the cave looked at the man. Apparently, he knows this person. The figure on the balcony walked on the balcony and went towards Zhao Ha. This man's face was like a knife cut, with sharp edges and corners, and a beautiful appearance. The man was enveloped with a majestic inclination, as if he was extraordinary. His eyes were sharp and deep, his face expressionless, but gave off an invisible pressure. When Zhao Ha saw this man coming, he shouted, Thousands less. There are people outside, and there is a sky outside, now understand. The young man calmly opened his mouth. Zhao Ha nodded. He also admits that there is a huge gap between talent and Ye Fusion, but he still doesn't want to go. The young man spoke. Zhao Ha glanced at Ye Fusion, but still nodded and retreated, as if the young man's words were an order, which was stronger than Ye Fusion's barrier to him. Ye Fusion, who was enlightening, frowned. He shifted his gaze, and an invisible willpower pressed straight at Zhao Ha. I saw that at this time, the young man's terrifying wealth permeated and turned into a real dragon to surround Zhao Ha, guarding Zhao Ha. Zhao Han's body quickly retreated and exited the cave. Luck like that, luck goes back to youth. At this moment, he is even more dazzling, like a dragon among real people. Good luck. Everyone's heart trembled. It was indeed the legendary him, an extinct demon figure in the land of 1,000 alliances, with an extremely majestic existence. It's just a small thing, let's stop there. The young man looked at Ye Fusion and said, those innocent words seem to contain absolute authority. In the younger generation of Qianmeng land, his words are indeed authority. Chapter 167, Law Student. Ye Fusion looked at the young man in front of him. He already knew the identity of Zhao Ha, the son of Yu Jianzong. However, as soon as the young man in front of him appeared, Zhao Ha respectfully asked him to withdraw, and then he immediately withdrew. So who is this person? Of course, that's just curiosity. He wants my life. Do you think this is a trivial matter? Ye Fusion smiled and said, you better convince me. Everyone in the Qianmen cave before Gao Grotto stared at Ye Fusion. This person might not know who was standing in front of him, but he dared to speak like that. If he couldn't convince her, wouldn't he dare to? Not to mention the unknown victory or defeat, even if he can win, he moves the young man, Ye Fusion will definitely die, and he will never get out of the city unless he will never hide in the cave. Compared to your goal of entering the wilderness, of course this is a trivial matter. The youth smiled indifferently. A few complaints, even if you can kill it, with the power of the cave, no one will catch you, but what is it? Aren't you going out? Why is that for a little grudge? In the barren ancient world, everything is trivial except to win the king's wealth and become stronger. Ye Fusion did not speak, and still looked at the young man calmly, as if waiting for the other party to continue speaking. With your talent, Wang Huchi Yun should not be difficult to obtain. It is only a matter of time, but in the ancient world, apart from Wang Huchi Yun, there are useful things to practice. For example, in Lulan city, there are ancient ruins of Lulan. There are several ruins that disappeared from the outside world. In countless years, in the area of Lulan city, many genius figures have visited and want to enter to see the ancient ruins of Lulan. Will be interested. The young man smiled, apparently very confident with his own assessment. Ye Fusion did have some interest when he heard the young man's words. Qianmeng city was the closest city to the entrance to the land of the 100 nations. They came here directly after entering the wilderness, but after understanding the wilderness map, Ye Fusion left. The idea of going out was obviously impossible to stay in Qianmeng's place, so he wasn't afraid to offend Zhao Ha. Diolo Lancheng is the center of this area, and because of that, he must have a stronger lucky place. What's in the ancient ruins? Ye Fusion asked. Many, for example, artifacts that contain the will of the prince. Such treasures can't be brought to the ancient world from the outside, and even outside, you can't get an artifact of this level. This is only one of them. The ancient ruins will never let you down. Youth roared. Why did you tell me? Ye Fusion looked at someone else. The young man's purpose came not only to adjust the contradiction between him and Zhao Ha, but also to the following words. However, if there is such a place, why? Don't be direct but tell yourself. Of course it's because of your talent. The youth smiled and said, if you want to go, we will go together, and he will go too. He said that the young man pointed to another person who was training in the cave corridor. Before Ye Fusion, only the two of them were in the corridor of the cave. I can practice here for a while, Ye Fusion said. No problem, I will come to you in 3 months, how about it? Said the young man. Okay. Ye Fusion nodded directly, without speaking nonsense. Farewell. The young man smiled and turned to leave. He walked beside Zhao Ha and said, this is the end of this matter. Yes, Qian Shao. Zhao Ha nodded his head, not daring to object. Then the young man lifted his feet and left, and the people around him subconsciously gave way to him. Obviously his status was very respectable. After the young man left, Zhao coldly glanced at Ye Fusion. Today, he has lost all his face, but he has no chance to take revenge. Go. A voice came out of his mouth, and Zhao Ha carried Yang Ziki away. Ziki's face showed unwillingness, and his eyes still couldn't see the beautiful shadow on the cave walk. He still couldn't accept the woman he liked being someone else's servant. He was furious when he thought he could serve a man. But he can't change anything. Zhao Ha is helpless now, and he can only follow. Everyone around me sighed. Ye Fuxian was favored by Qian Shao, and invited him to Lulan City, but with Ye Fuxian's talent, it will be very terrible in the future. Perhaps Qian Shao would consider attracting him to work under His Majesty. As long as Ye Fuxian agrees, it can become a top person in Qianmeng land in the future. But the young confederacy of the Confederate land. Ye Fuxian didn't mind Zhao Han's business anymore. As the young man said, this was really just a trivial matter. He even looked forward to the beautiful things in the ancient world. Of course, he also understood that the young man had invited him. That must be a handy place to get it. He might want to use it, but he doesn't mind. This is mutual. When he comes to Lulan City, look at the situation again. Stepping forward, Ye Fuxian also set foot on the cave promenade, and a faint power will fell on his body. He walked on the promenade, and every time he walked under the stone statue, he could feel the power of will coming from it. Pressure, and very clear, very suitable for understanding under stone statues. There are many holes in the cave, which seem to be naturally generated. When Ye Fuxian entered one of the caves, he felt that the coercion outside did not exist. If he doesn't want to resist the will, he can enter the cave in the cave. After understanding the situation, Ye Fuxian walked down the corridor again, and returned to the 13 steps of death. He made heavy strides instead of using imperial intent, but fought purely with attribute power, such as fire and wood attributes. Continuing to use the prince's cave to temper himself. This left many people in front of the cave completely speechless. Wanghao Grottoes, the strongest lucky place in Qianmeng City, had become Ye Fuxian's plaything, no matter what he wanted to practice. Over the next few days, several people who stayed here saw Ye Fuxian's luxurious practice, sometimes tasted it, sometimes conveyed the desire of the statue, and sometimes stepped in front of the cave, as if they were having fun, and many of them they were hailed as geniuses. The characters can't even make 7 steps, they see Ye Fuxian's active figure, there is a desire to be violent to him. What's more, the black wind eagle rises from time to time in this age, and every time I feel something, I flap my wings vigorously, making many talented people want to roast it and eat it. Too much, this beast is too bully. After a few days, Ye Fuxian finally calmed down and walked to a cave in the cave. The cave was so deep he couldn't see it. What was truly speechless was that he let the beautiful woman Yun Qianmo stay outside the cave and didn't let others speak. This is actually calling Yun Qianmo a servant. Time continued to pass, and the rest of his life, Ye Wuchen and the others practiced quietly. On this day, in the cave where Ye Fuxian was, a terrible breath seeped out, his body made a loud roar, and his blood roared loudly. After Ye Fuxian, 3 souls appeared. The majestic thunder dragon, the dazzling golden winged rock, the arrogant ape, and the 3 souls released 4 attribute powers, thunder, wind, gold, and earth. Outside the cave house, a terrifying aura poured into the stone cave, and the aura in the cave seemed to be evacuated, converging wildly into Ye Fuxian's body. The terrifying aura was based on the soul of life, and it instantly closed to form the Fa phase. The strongest in the field of law can condense the law. Martial arts practitioners gather heaven and earth to create magic phases with martial arts meaning, and mages use auras and spells as prototypes to create magic phases. But fate mages mostly use souls as prototypes to freeze the law phase, integrating the life soul into the law phase. See Ye Fuxian, he is not just one soul, in theory, he can cast many aspects. At this moment, the 3 souls behind Ye Fuxian seemed to be throwing 3 different aspects of the Fa. However, Ye Fuxian did not do it. The Emperor's tactics worked. He inspired the will of the Emperor and enveloped life and soul. At the same time, the Prince of Qi Yun was also released and integrated into it. A roar came out, the ancient trees of the soul and the world of the souls were released, and the 3 semblants of Dharma were all involved in the ancient trees of the world, and then turned into a terrible vortex. Attributes and auras intertwined and roared wildly. This stone cave is like a black hole that has devoured everything, a crazy eating aura from outside. The roaring sound continued to come out, shaking in the eardrums of Yun Qianmo, who was standing outside. At this time, he wanted to go to the stone cave to see what was going on, which could cause such a terrible movement, but he didn't. Ye Fuxian ordered him very seriously. If he barged in by force, he didn't know what Ye Fuxian would do to him. The man looked harmless to humans and animals, but that was not at all nice. This movement lasted a long time. In the cave, behind Ye Fuxian, there was only one Fa phase. This statue is very strange, he has a very terrible body, the body of the ape god, shining with gold and yellow light of the earth, and the power of thunder. Every line of this ape's body is like a dragon. His palms were full of strength and sharpness, like the golden winged claws of Daping at all times. On the back of the god ape, there was a pair of extremely majestic and domineering wings. At a glance, this divine ape fills the majestic power of heaven and earth, as if the snow ape in the sky demon mountain should shake the world. Ye Fusion practiced Ye Qingdai's bodybuilding exercises, and is now using martial arts methods to pay tribute to Ye Qingdai and his seniors. Fa, there are 3 great souls of Ye Fusion hidden by the Fa, so that no one can see anything. However, Ye Fusion did not stop practicing, the Fa phase disappeared, he closed his eyes and continued to be aware of the practice. He has many lives and souls, even if he condenses one aspect with the 3 main souls, he can still consolidate the other aspects. Chapter 168, You Can't Afford. In the cave, Ye Fusion practiced quietly. A few days later, outside the stone cave, Yunkanmo sat there, only feeling the flames and terrifying aura moving crazily towards the stone cave. When he sat outside the cave, he could feel the heat. Come on again. Yunking Momi's eyes flashed, what exactly is this person practicing? The movement of the past few days has been great. Should we come again this time? Condense the Fa phase, he should have condensed a few days ago. Can he condense the dual phase? After a while, Yunkanmo felt the madness of the extremely terrifying wood aura. His heart trembled, and as far as he knew, Ye Fusion had released 6 of the 7 attributes. In addition, he was a violin mage, which meant that the man was probably a full attribute mage, including the spiritual department. Ye Fusion had only appeared twice in Qianmeng City, once in the Kangshan ruins and once in this Prince Hu cave. Twice, both shocked the heroes, no one can match. But Yunkanmo seemed to realize at this moment that Ye Fusion had not actually shot. The realm is too low. Before that, only the realm of glory broke into the realm. Now no one cares about his own strength or attribute talent, but at the moment when Yunkanmo feels vague, Ye Fusion's spiritual talent may be terrible. And, his fighting power must be extremely extraordinary. A terrifying aura poured into the cave from around his body, and hot breaths came from him, and he could feel the heat flow. This situation lasted a long time, the cave looked bright, and people in the distance could faintly see the fire in the cave. At this time, he was lying in a rock cave, and Ye Fusion sat cross-legged behind him, another terrible fire appeared. It was a very large fire tree. On this terrible fire tree, the sun hangs beneath it. It is like a furnace under the sun. The fire roared wildly, and then the tree gradually merged into the sun. Deep, slight penetration. In the end, the sun hung there, and there was a shadow of a tree in the sun, and there was a burning flame below, like a furnace, roaring and roaring constantly. This state lasted a long time, the Fa phase disappeared, Ye Fusion still did not come out, and continued to practice in the stone cave. This practice took a long time. Now that he has entered the realm of the French phase, he has forged the French phase, next he must stabilize his realm and realize his will and fortune. Time passed quickly, and people continued to come to Wanghao Cave, stepping in front of the caves, seeing the many figures on the balcony and monsters, many people would show a helpless expression. 3 months finally arrived. On this day, a group of strong people came to the front of the Wanghao Caves, and when they saw the youth being led by them, many shouted respectfully, thousands less. Lai Lai was a young man who had agreed with Ye Fusion at the beginning. When he arrived, he saw Ye Fusion standing in the corridor of the cave and chatting with the rest of his life. It seems that I saw him coming. Ye Fusion and others walked down the corridor of the cave one after another, and some changes in their temperament. Yan Ye Wachan, trained in the cave to break through the realm, stepped into the 4th order law realm, and gained a stronger understanding of the will of Kendo. On the same day, he forcibly took 13 steps of death, which was a transformation for him. There were 3 people behind Qianshao. Ye Fusion saw Zhao Ha and a strong man. He was standing behind Qianshao with a big axe on his back. Seeing him in the Qianmeng area, he was a little surprised. Shi Wutong, the demon figure of Zhen Wuzong, is now following Qianshao. According to rumors, he had been determined to be Zhen Wuzong's helmsman in the future, and supported Qianshao in his place. In addition to Zhao Ha of Shitong, there is a woman wearing a long thin skirt, charming face, slender and weak bones, but very plump somewhere. Her skin is like jade with a charming luster, her eyes it can attract and show an invisible charm. His appearance is comparable to Yunqing Mo, who is not as good as Lin Yao, but his charm is very attractive to men. The people of the Qianmeng area also recognized her, Yu Linglong, a beauty who fascinated many Tianzhou characters in Qianmeng's place. Wasn't he following Qian Shao now? At this time, another young man who had previously practiced walking in the cave also came here. The proud son of heaven in the 1,000 League is lonely. It is said that he was an orphan. Based on his extraordinary will, he came out of heaven and earth in the 1,000 League. Now, following the main practice of the League, he is accepted as a disciple, and his talent is terrible. Coupled with Ye Fusion, the rest of his life, Ye Wuchen and others, everyone saw this heartline shaking. The four people next to Qian Qianshao, Dugu Leng, Shi Tong, Zhao Ha, and Yu Linglong, are probably the worst talents of Zhao Han's son, Zhao Ha. Others had defeated him in the Wanghao caves. Although Ye Fusion's territory is much worse, his talent is unquestionable. Maybe Lin Yao and Yunkin Mo were weaker, but Qian Shao especially invited the three Ye Fusion. Perhaps the three of them were Qian people who lacked respect. Introduction: My name is Qianyang. This is Dugu Leng, Shi Tong and Yu Linglong. You don't need to introduce Zhao Ha if you know about it. The previous complaints are put aside for a moment. The people here are all at the top of the Qianmeng character area. Qian Yang smiled. Ye Fusion, the rest of his life, Ye Wuchen, Lin Yao, Yunqing Mo. Ye Fusion said, and introduced him. Now that we're ready, let's get straight to it, Qian Yang said with a smile, then turned around and stepped forward. Haifengdiu opened his wings and spread out, and immediately Ye Fusion stepped on Haifengdiu's back and was ready to leave. Ye Fusion. At this time, suddenly a voice came out. Ye Fusion turned his eyes, and saw Chu Quangrun's eyes staring at him. I saw a madman at this time staring at the group of people in the black wind carving. He was very proud to hear Nandu country listen to the wind. He was very proud of everything and provoked Ye Fusion and Ye Wuchen several times. Although the two sides did not fight, but everything that happened later, whether Ye Fusion or Ye Wuchen, gradually threw it away, which made him very uncomfortable. Isn't the heavenly arrogance in the Yanchu kingdom so unbearable? You have entered the country of law, you must have gathered laws in the past few months. Chu Quangrun said, let me see your laws. Even though he was watching, he actually wanted to learn, he wanted to try again and see if he had been dumped by him who was once just a state of glory. See, Ye Fusion's eyes flashed, and he said to Chu angrily, you can't stand it. Boom. A powerful breath bloomed from the Chu madman, sweeping straight towards Ye Fusion. I took a step forward for the rest of my life, and it seemed like I was about to start, but when Ye Fusion stopped him, he said, in this case, you can be desperate. The voice fell, and a ray of sunshine appeared behind Ye Fusion. His body seemed to be bathed in endless flames, and the terrifying rays of the sun shone straight down. It seems to contain a strong firepower. When Chu madman saw Ye Fusion's face, I saw the sunlight penetrate directly. At this moment, Chu Quangrun's eyes seemed to light up, and a sun mark appeared in his eyes. Ah! With a scream, Chu Quangrun closed his eyes in pain. The state of Jin Yunchu rushed forward, but seeing the black wind spreading wings, Ye Futian's far face disappeared. After they were emptied, Chu Quangrun's eyes opened, and there was Yin Hong blood flowing out. Scary, Chu Quangrun looked at the disappearing figure. Just as Ye Fusion said, the redness of despair was in his eyes. I once said that he would teach Ye Fusion how to be a man. His nicknames are crazy, and you can imagine his personality, but now he finds that some people may not be so flashy when they are low-key, but one day you will suddenly find that it is not a character you can reach at all. He was indeed somewhat desperate, the talent he had always been proud of was simply irresistible. He wants to see Ye Fusion's law. Ye Fusion said to him, you can't afford it. However, he couldn't stand it, he couldn't see it. Flying across the sky, 5 people from Qianyang rode another monster, a Feng Peng. As he waited for the black wind engraving to follow, Qian Yang laughed, the magical aspect is good. It was born of magic and aura. Okay, Ye Fusion smiled casually, he definitely wouldn't tell Qian Yang that his far face was integrated into the soul, as well as spiritual will, otherwise how could Chu madman be injured in an instant? Humble, but this time I might be able to see a lot of talented people when I go to Lulan City. Qian Yang said with a smile. Ye Fusion nodded slightly and didn't say much. Yunkanmo, Qianyang shouted at Yunkanmo behind Ye Fusion, and Yunkanmo saw his eyes look at Qianyang. It's quite difficult and daring for you to make a choice. On the other hand, Zhao Ha is too arrogant. I don't want him to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it, Qian Yang said. Many thanks, Yun Qianmo was relieved. The group continued to move forward. Feng Peng blinked, the speed was very fast, the black wind carving did not want to show weakness, and walked by the wind, as if deliberately compared to Feng Peng. His eyes were slightly narrower than before, sweeping towards Feng Peng at that moment. He has a little pride, but he has eaten Feng Peng's meat and it is very delicious. When will he be able to roast this Feng Peng? A few days later, an ancient city that was more ancient and majestic than Qianmeng City appeared in Ye Fuxian's vision. Diaolo Lancheng, here it is. Lulan ancient country has a very long history. This Lulan ancient country was built in the ancient world countless years ago. In this ancient city, Lulan ancient country has absolute authority. Yun Qianmo opened his mouth behind Ye Fuxian. Ye Fuxian nodded, and the black-winged eagle rushed to catch up to Feng Peng. Ye Fuxian asked, where are we now? Qian Qianyang looked at Ye Fuxian and smiled, go and visit Lulan Palace in the ancient world. Chapter 169, Lulan Ancient Ruins. The ancient country of Lulan built Lulan city in the ancient world. For many years, the ancient city of Lulan has always controlled this ancient city, and even built a royal palace in Lulan city, which is said to have direct access to the real Lulan palace outside. There were rumors that the ancient country of Lulan was highly motivated to control Lulan palace. No one is allowed to touch it. Even influential figures from the wastelands of the deserted city were unwilling to shake the Lulan kingdom's status in the city. The reason is only one, the ancient ruins of Lulan. The ancient ruins of Lulan are the relics of the very famous Lulan city. It was said that some of the things inside were items from the ancient kingdom of Lulan. Currently, there is no Lulan ancient kingdom. Therefore, for many years, the ancient country of Lulan has sent strong people to the ancient ruins of Lulan. Dig up everything in the ruins. Enter the ruins, you have to pass through Lulan Palace in the ancient realms to agree to it. So Qian Yang arrived at Lulan city and headed straight for Lulan Palace. Obviously, he had prepared well and had already made plans. The Lulu Royal Palace was the most magnificent building in Lulan city, with a simple atmosphere. When Ye Fuxian arrived, the Black Wind statue and Feng Peng landed. At this time, there were many people outside the palace, looking at the palace steps in front and the majestic arched gate. I was there were many guards. The land of the Qianmeng League, the leader of the Qianmen League, Qianyang, came to visit. Shi Tong took a step forward and shouted towards the palace. Help! At the palace gate, the guard spear was raised, and said loudly, as if knowing that Qian Yang and others were coming, and let go. Qianyang stepped forward, and his group followed, and entered Lulan Palace. Many people in the royal palace looked at them, revealing a strange light. These people seemed to be from Qianmeng city, and the young league leader of the Qianmeng land brought people personally. It seems to have come to the ancient ruins of Lulan, but this time the great cities of the ancient world have arrived. I am afraid that it is alive again. Ye Fuxian they were taken to an elegant neighborhood place, where there was an independent palace. Qian Yang and Ye Fuxian each chose a palace. Ye Fuxian, you go to the palace to rest first, I will find you if something happens. Qian Yang said to Ye Fuxian. See Ye Fuxian's eyes lit up, and he asked Yun Qianmo a few things along the way, but Yun Qianmo didn't know much. He only knew that this trip was for the ancient ruins of Lulan, but more things were completely unknown. Can the youth league leader introduce this journey first? Ye Fuxian asked. What are you worried about? Beside Qian Yang, Yu Linglong looked at Ye Fuxian with a smile. Her sexy figure is sultry, her eyes are a bit stale. Since Qian Shao brought you to the palace, he will naturally take you to the ancient ruins, you just have to wait for the good news. But I still have some things I don't understand. Ye Fuxian smiled. He didn't think Qian Yang was good enough to take him, which was naturally useful to him. You don't need to understand, Shi Tong said lightly. Ye Fuxian. Qian Yang reached out to stop Shi Tong, said, I know that you doubt that the ancient ruins are a strange land, and those who are not high can get something. I need your talent, because I will come to you to join. If you get something from the ancient ruins, everyone will discuss how to divide it, and you don't have to think about other things. Okay. Ye Fuxian nodded, then lifted his feet and left, towards the palace where he lived. After entering the palace, Lin Yao's eyes flashed and she said, he doesn't know how honest he is. It shouldn't be a problem for you to join, maybe because of your talent in the cave, but if you really have something to gain, how to share it. Although Qianyang only has 5 people, which of the 5 is not the pinnacle of the legal state, especially Qianyang himself, who has the fortune of the prince, can greatly increase the combat effectiveness, and the strength of the two sides is not equal. At that time, they couldn't help it. How I feel he is teasing us step by step. The rest of his life also said, frowning. But knowing that there might be trouble, we are still here. Ye Fuxian laughed and said, even if it comes, even if there is no Qianyang, if we break into the ancient ruins, there will be other people who see it, and just looking outside it should be more than our group. The rest of his life nodded and said nothing, because there are ancient ruins of Lulan here, they will come sooner or later. In the next few days, Lulan Palace was quite crowded, but Ye Fuxian remained in the palace and practiced without going out. Even Qianyang's movements were not clear. Until one day, Yu Linglong came to Ye Fuxian's palace and found Ye Fuxian. Get ready, the Lulan Ancient Country banquet invites everyone, the ancient country girl will also appear, Yu Linglong said with a smile. Lulan Kingdom's sacred mistress. Ye Fuxian looked at Zhanggu Linglong, why not a princess? Not yet, your servant said, there are no princesses in the ancient country of Lulan, only girls. They are waiting outside, please hurry. Yu Linglong left with a smile. Ye Fuxian didn't think much of it, he gathered everyone out of the palace and saw that Qianyang and the others were already there. Let's go, Qianyang said with a smile, and the group walked in a certain direction. They descended the stairs in front of a palace, where a wine banquet had been set up. There were many people here, all with extraordinary temperaments, all people from all sides. Qianyang found a seat to sit down, and suddenly Ye Fuxian they all sat in the area. Here, it seems that the people of each side are sitting in an area, and there are many different forces coming. When they sat down, many people looked at them and looked at them. At this time, in the direction of the palace, a line of figures came to this side and walked up the stairs. For a moment, people's eyes were drawn to the middle figure. Lu Lixiu, the ancient woman of Lulan, when she was remote, her hair was like snow, glittering with silver brilliance, and she was gently sprinkled on her shoulders. The whole person is empty and holy, with a temper as cold as a fairy who does not eat fireworks. Her eyes were faintly silvery, not like ordinary people, but beautiful. Why, the eyes won't move. Ling Yao smiled and looked at Ye Fuxian rode next to him. Ye Fuxian looked back, and looked at Ling Yao with a smile, compared again, bad mood. Is your girlfriend pretty? Ling Yao asked with a smile. Not. Ye Fuxian said, it's too cold. Isn't a cold beauty with a different temperament bad? Ling Yao smiled shallowly. The voices of the two people were very low. The stairs and the distance were far, so of course they couldn't be heard. I'm not the type of person you think. Ye Fuxian said truthfully. Gao Linuya gave him a disdainful look, and didn't know if it was fake. Many people present at this time were attracted by Lu Langxiu. In fact, Lin Yao is also very beautiful. His appearance may not be inferior to Lu Langxiu's, but Lu Langxiu's temperament is too different. Standing next to Lu Langxiu was a young man. His eyes are very sharp. He glanced at them and said, you came from far away, so the girl greeted you in person. Besides, there are some words about the ancient ruins of Lulan. Let everyone know beforehand. Everyone listened quietly, and the young man continued, you are not from the Lulan kingdom, but this time when I invited you to Lulan, I naturally wanted to take advantage of Tianjiao's strength from all sides, and everyone here is extraordinary. Need to check your status again, and you can directly enter the ancient ruins with the Tianjiao character in my Lulan ancient country. However, the ancient ruins of Lulan are the ruins of my ancient country, and there are many rare things in my ancient country. Therefore, if you get them from the ancient ruins, the artifacts can be removed by you. As for some special treasures, if my ancient Lulan country is if necessary, you will trade with you for the same value. If you can agree, you can enter the ancient ruins. If you don't agree, please do it yourself. I will not be reluctant in the ancient country of Lulan. When Ye Fuxian heard the words of the other party, his eyes flickered with strangeness. The Lulan ancient ruins treasure seemed to want it very much. For this reason, he invited people from other places to come and explore the ruins. What's in the ruins? He was expecting something. According to Qianyang, the Lulan ancient ruin artifact was probably an artifact that contained a prince's will. An artifact of this level could hardly be picked up by any kingdom in any country. People are still very quiet, they know this naturally. If you don't talk, I will agree to this condition by default. As for the danger in the ancient ruins, you have to have a plan, I won't say much. The youth said lightly, please feast. Everyone's eyes flashed, they had their own thoughts, and they were still staring at Lu Langxiu, but at this moment, Lu Langxiu stood up and looked at the people. Please help yourself, I will be lost if there is something else. Did that girl go to school to evaluate the Lulan ancient kingdom? At this time, someone on the chair asked the Lulan girl. The Lu Langxiu paused, looked at each other, and nodded gently. The banquet is not necessary, can you go with the maid to take a look and see the extraordinary style of Lulan city? The man said with a smile. Diolin Langxiu looked at the young man, whispered a word, and then walked away first. The young man turned and looked at the people. Are you all interested? It's so boring to party here, it's better to have a look, another spoke. Yes, if you want to go, you can go with me. Others want to have a banquet or go, feel free. The youth said calmly, and many people stood up and walked towards the young man. Let's have a look as well, Qian Yang said, suddenly standing up towards the young man. However, there are areas of people who leave quietly, and don't seem interested in them. Shi Qianyang looked at the people with a slight frown. Those strong people seemed to have come from there. If the people there are also interested in the ancient ruins of Lulan, I don't know what the consequences will be. Application. Chapter 170, Ruins. Many people gathered around the Royal Palace campus. In the large school grounds, there is a formation, filled with fog, with drums on all sides and drums with armored soldiers, making the formation like a terrible battlefield. The people of the ancient country of Lululan participated in the assessment here. As long as they could walk through this battlefield, it meant passing through. When the Lulixu girl arrived, she immediately attracted countless eyes, silver hair and silver eyes, extraordinary temperament, extraordinary. They had never seen such a beautiful woman, and her temperament was different, but she was too cold, as if no one could approach her. The girl stood in the stands in front of the school grounds and looked down. Soon more people entered the school grounds and seemed to want to show something. This seems to be a fantasy battlefield. Ye Fusion looked at the school field and said. It is said that the ancient ruins of Lulan are a battlefield, it is possible for people to adapt. Yun Qianmo whispered next to him. Would you like to try it? Ling Yao smiled and looked at Ye Fusion. We can go directly to the ancient ruins, why waste time? Ye Fusion said. Show yourself in front of a saint, Lin Yao laughed. Ye Fusion glared at him, not caring. Next to me, there were people from other regions before the banquet. At this time, only one person said, hearing about the ancient ruins as a battlefield. This assessment may be an exercise. Are you interested in trying it? The speaker is from Yuncheng in the ancient world. There is a terrible power in the area, Yanzong, who has a very profound attainment of fire. It is led by Yanzong. The other two people were from Yunshao City and Jiushan City. Yunshao City took the Yunshao Mountain Gate in their honor. They had absolute authority in the city. Outside, Yunshao Mountain was a sacred mountain in a vast area. Many of the gate troops bowed their heads. Be a retainer. Jiushan City is based on the supreme power of the Jiushan Pavilion. From the outside world, the Jiushan Pavilion dominates many kingdoms and places of command. King and King Humo didn't dare to follow. The spheres of influence represented by the outside world were simply not comparable to the lands of 100 countries. Yanzong repairs fire, Lulan ancient country practices the power of water, I am afraid that water and fire are unbearable, the trip to the ancient ruins, I am afraid that Yanzong is hard to come by. The visitor from Yunshao City said with a smile. Shouldn't water and fire just complement each other? Yanzong people smiled indifferently. This array is a battle array, testing willpower, if you are interested, you can try it. On the stand, the sharp young man beside the Virgin Lulixu looked at the crowd and said. Everyone's eyes flashed, and it seemed a little interesting. Jiushan City chief said, it's better to send the three of them to try, how about it? Okay. The people in Yuncheng and Skysty agreed. Yes. Qian Yang nodded. He looked at Ye Fusion and said, the three of you are dazzling in front of the cave. This battle line has the same magic and is very similar, so how are you going to give it a chance for performance? No need, we're not interested. Ye Fusion smiled and shook his head. Shi Qianyang glanced at the two of them, and then nodded with a smile, by the way, in this case, you give it a try. Shi Tong, Yu Linglong and Zhao Ha who nodded behind him nodded, and then headed to the other side of the school grounds. I missed a good opportunity. Qian Yang smiled and looked at Ye Fusion. Not the same as that young league leader. Ye Fusion responded with a smile. Qian Yang's eyes flickered and he didn't say anything. After a while, the quartet entered the school at the same time. Shi Tong was very arrogant. He held the axe forward, Yu Linglong was so handsome, Zhao Ha paved the way with the sword. The Yanzong people have a terrible fire, the Yungxiu Shinman strongman bathes in the Tianli, and the Jiushange strongman has different methods, all of them are very extraordinary. They broke through the ranks all the way forward, went to the end of the school grounds, and looked at the Lulan Virgin. Delu Langxiu nodded slightly, but her expression was as cold as ever, and she didn't speak, as if she was born with such a character. Everyone returned to their place, Yu Linglong smiled and said, that girl is really cold, but it is beautiful. Of course. Shi Tong nodded. Qianyang's eyes flashed, looking at the woman who was clean of ice and jade, and his eyes seemed to have a deep meaning. Please wait for me. At this time, Ye Fusion said for the rest of his life and beyond, then lifted his leg and walked away. Where did he go? Ling Yao leaked Ye Fusion. Everyone saw Ye Fusion walking towards the pulpit, and couldn't help but show a strange look. Even Qianyang looked at Ye Fusion's back. Where did that person go? Who's he? Yan Zong also asked. Many people looked at Ye Fusion with curiosity. Ye Fusion, dressed in pure white clothes, was a handsome boy, and his face was very handsome. He had to say that his temperament was extremely extraordinary, and he stepped into the place where the royal virgin was. Yulin Yao's eyes flickered. Is this okay? At this time, the sharp young man beside the girl also looked at Ye Fusion, only to see Ye Fusion look indifferent, like a peerless figure. Is your business doing well? He asked. A few words want to ask the girl. Ye Fusion said lightly, and the sharp young man frowned slightly, but seeing the girl, Lu Langxiu, turned his head, looked at Ye Fusion, and said, let her come. Zun Fengli's youth was released. Ye Fusion lifted his leg and walked over to Lu Langxiu. He smiled and asked, the virgin practices the power of water, majoring in spirituality. Lu Langxiu looked at Ye Fusion in surprise and said coldly, how did you know? Practice will be manifested in temperament. The holy temperament is very cold. Naturally, the power of practicing ice. As for the spiritual system, it can be seen from the eyes. Ye Fusion calmly opened his mouth, he walked to the sacred side and looked down. Schoolyard. In the direction of the four major powers, everyone looked at Ye Fusion in amazement. At this moment, he was standing side by side with the saint, with an extraordinary temperament, as if he was an extraordinary person. Who's he? The people at Yanzhuang Yanshan Gate asked one after another. They looked at Qianyang. Who is the leader of Qianmeng city? I saw Ye Fusion's temperament, and stood side by side with the saint, as if he was the head of the school. Qianyang's face was also very strange. Ling Yao's eyes stared at Ye Fusion silently, shameless. Only the Lulin Virgin, said the rest of her life, what's so strange? Now he has a more honorable status, and I still don't know if he is qualified to stand next to Ye Fusion. Ling Yao looked at the rest of her life, speechless. Aren't the two men serious about ancient royal mistress Lulu? At this moment Lu Langxiu looked at Ye Fusion in amazement. Every time, people from all armies wanted to show something in front of him. The same thing happened to the four main forces that came to the school grounds, but he didn't expect anyone to walk so majestic. For him, at the banquet, I heard the girl guard say that the ancient ruins have what Lu Lan wants. Can the girl specifically say what is there, so that it is easier to find? Ye Fusion looked at Lu Langxiu and asked. Lan Lixiu's silver eyes looked at Ye Fusion and said, if you look at the treasure book in the ancient ruins, you can pay special attention. Understand. Ye Fusion nodded his head, and said, I am a person of slightly lower cultivation, and I don't completely trust those who walk with me. If I get the treasure that the ancient country wants, I will exchange it for the ancient country, but it's out. Ruins, can that girl keep me safe? However, someone else might force her directly. Lulin-Zu looked at Ye Fusion, fixed a little lower and so confident, but she still nodded, I will also enter the ruins. If you can get something, you can find me. Thank you very much. Ye Fusion smiled, then turned and returned to the crowd. What did you talk to that girl about? Qianyang stepped forward to ask. I asked what kind of guy the girl likes. Ye Fusion said with a smile, Little League leader, we go back first. Qianyang watched Ye Fusion leave and frowned. Was this person teasing him? How dare he ask that girl for such words? Zhao Ha looked at Ye Fusion gloomy. He is a jerk and he doesn't take an unusual path. Others want to behave in front of the saint. He did well and walked directly to the saint. The two spoke. Ye Fusion was too lazy to think about what other people thought. He didn't trust Qianyang. She had never mentioned to him the situation in the ancient ruins from beginning to end. He couldn't believe that Qianyang had not investigated. If there is no profit from the ancient ruins, then only if you really get the treasure, then anything can happen. It is always right to be prepared. 23 days later, many people gathered here in the depths of the palace. Ye Fusion and the other people from Qianmeng City, Yuncheng City, Yunshao City, Jiushan City, Lulin City, and those who left the school directly after the banquet all arrived. Lu Lixiu also arrived, and he personally brought people to him. There were many Lulin guards behind him, all of whom were of extraordinary temperament, and they were clearly very prominent French figures. Ye Fusion looked at the people, then looked at the mysterious crowd who didn't know where they came from. There are only 4 of them. They were very calm, but they gave off a dangerous atmosphere. These people may be very strong. There is a door in front of the gate. Behind the door, there is a foggy area. You can see the very ancient city gate and walls. Here is the area where the ancient ruins are. The Lulu Royal Palace was built in front of the ancient ruins of Lulin and is guarded here. Let's go. At this time, the bright young man next to Lu Langxiu said, and suddenly everyone nodded and walked forward. Let's go, Qian Yang said, and suddenly Ye Fusion and others stepped out, entered the door, and entered the foggy area. The magnificent breath pierced the heavens and the earth. They passed through the fog, and the ancient gates and walls in front of them became clearer. Crossing the gate, there are ancient ruins, be careful. Behind him, the sharp man next to Lu Langxiu said, everyone was a little more alert and headed for the ancient gate. Ye Fusion watched the idea freely, looked forward, and wanted to see through the fog.